incorporate height. As Neil mentioned, we want to incorporate audible, tactile, hearing, all the different elements that they would be able to experience that they may not otherwise experience. One thing that is not here, but I'll show you another picture, is a sandbox. You know, every playground that we visited, something as simple as a sandbox. And we, you know, as we went and we visited these places, they said, well, what's the most, you know, played with piece of equipment? Where do you have the most traffic? Where all the kids congregate to? Most of them went to pavilions that were covered, and they were sandboxes. And, you know, how expensive is a sandbox? I don't know, but I certainly think it could be a little more cost beneficial to make a sandbox than buy a piece of equipment from the manufacturer. But the fact that they can get down and they can play in the sand and they can touch it and feel it, and it was an eye-opening experience for me that, you know, I have all this nice shiny equipment and everyone went to the sandbox. Not to say that we're just going to put a sandbox in, but certainly that's one of the elements that we want to include, because that, as we found out, is important. So height, everything has to be accessible to every piece of equipment has to be accessible to all kids with all disabilities. The shade, we found out that was important. Sandbox were important. So things like that. So we are learning as we go, but you know, we're looking for, we'll call them subject matter experts, but people out there, as Neil mentioned, we're all volunteers, but none of us have special needs children or children with disabilities. So we're looking to parents and moms and grandparents that have this and say, you know what, little Johnny or little Mary, they want to do this, but they can't. Can you incorporate this idea or this aspect into your design? And we're open to that. And I think that's why we're trying to get this message out to the community, and we want your feedback. We want to know, are we building the right, are we going down the right path? You know, we go on field trips and we look at it and we hear different things, but certainly you guys live it 24/7. You know what your kids need. You know what other kids need. Tell us, and we'll try to incorporate it. And I think that's what's going to make this even that much better, because we'll be able to incorporate all of these needs in our playground. So as I mentioned, and I went through a lot of this already, but there's just to visualize. I know a picture's worth 1,000 words, but just to visualize what does some of this equipment look like. It's not very much different than regular equipment, but it allows children, you know, as you see here, there's a wheelchair accessible swing. Here's a swing here, and here's where they can, everything's at this level, so they can roll up to it and touch it and feel it at their level. There's activity tables where they can roll up to, obviously ramps. This is kind of neat. It's just a very simple concept, but it's just pipes where they can run their hand across and make noise. And you know, that stimulates them. And you know, something as simple as that would give a child pleasure. So, you know, as I previously talked about, this is a picture of a sandbox with the cover. The shade's important. Things that they can do while sitting or standing at their level. Up here, you know, again, this is a little different take on getting down in the sand and actually playing around, because some of them can't get out of the wheelchair. So you have a little digger that they can do right from where they're sitting and dig just like everyone else. To me, that's pretty cool. So, you know, these are just some ideas that we're tossing around. I don't know where we're going to go with it. What, you know, are we going to get this exact piece of equipment? Maybe, maybe not. But certainly, you know, as this project evolves, we're going to see what are the needs and where should we spend our money most wisely. So as I mentioned, we've gone on a couple of field trips. One in particular is McDade Park up in Scranton. And we went up there, we took some pictures, saw their playground. This is real live, you know, this is, you can go visit yourself. What we found here, similarly to the next slide I'll show you, this right here the sand, this little pavilion, likewise, you know, the height elements. These are all things. There's a sand table or an activity table. Here's another sandbox. Those are the most popular places. So we're going to try to, as I mentioned before, not reinvent the wheel, but steal, if we can, some of their ideas, because it works for them. And you know, we had gone there in the summer months, so it was obviously nice weather, and there was a lot of foot traffic. There was a lot of kids, and you know, certainly things are getting played with. So we know that these things work. Another place that we went to was a playground called Firefly, and it's in Matamoros, PA. That was a pretty neat place. Similar elements as the McDade Park, but again, I put this up here for a couple of reasons. One, to show you, you know, how they have their placards and their signage for their donators. They have an opening kind of marquee as you walk into the playground here, and it kind of gives their I guess project mission or you know, the reason they did the project. I forget the exact background, but it was based on a nursery rhyme, Fireflies and Midnighters. I forget the exact thing, but that's not important. The important point is that, you know, we said, hey, that's pretty cool. Why don't we do, I don't know if we'll do something like that, but we certainly needed a project name, something to latch on, a theme. So our theme, as I mentioned before, crossing abilities. So we're gonna stay with that theme. And you know, they had this. This is pretty cool. This was a sliding board, but it was rollers, and it was twice as wide as a normal one. So you know, kids with disabilities could use it. And it's kind of like the grocery store where your groceries slide down all those rollers. That's exactly what it was. I thought that was really neat. And that was something that we liked as well. They also had elements of height where they have these ramps up to these little, I'll call them forts, but they're pavilions that are elevated above the rest of the playground where kids could go. And surprisingly enough, they went up to this enclosure that was above everything else, and there was really nothing up there for them. You know, there was a couple of things where they can drag their hand across and make some noise, but there wasn't a lot of activities up there, but everyone liked to go there because they were up high. So that was,
Alex, also they were in the tree like you talked about earlier. They were in the tree, and it was like really cool that that concept came out, because not often do kids in wheelchairs get to be in a tree. So the trees were right next to them.
yes, it was really neat.
We really learned a lot going up there. That was, and I'm not sure if you're done with your slide, but I wanted to touch base because what we learned as we're going out and doing these field trips is we're learning, because our whole purpose of doing this is to make sure all these kids can have things that they're going to do. This is one of a kind. People were like, this is the place. This is what you want to do. This is everything. And yet we found that there's things that they're missing. Now they have a lot of places where they can incorporate things, like they said, into that fort top. They were going to add things in, so they were going to do different phases also. But I want Kevin to step up and talk about some of the things that he noticed about, you know, the accessibility. Even though this is one of the most accessible parks, we still ran into issues.